The Orillia Championship hockey team who went to war, presented as part of the Virtual Remembrance Day event 2020 by the Orillia Public Library. In 1911, the Orillia Yonkers hockey team was formed by a group of 16 and 17-year-old lacrosse players. The four most remarkable players on the team were Lovering Jupp, Ken Mcnabb, Quinn Butterfield, and Norm Cook. They played in the Ontario Hockey League finals, winning Game 1, but losing the second. That year, they lost the championship by the tiebreaker. In the 1912 season, history repeated itself, with the Yonkers once again losing the championship tiebreaker. In 1913 was the undefeated season. The Yonkers won the championship title. Their fans were so excited that the Yonkers had finally won, they lit a celebratory bonfire at the corner of Peter and Mississauga Streets. In 1914, when Lovering Jupp and Norm Cook became too old to play in the Junior League, they formed an intermediate team in the OHL. Mcnabb and Butterfield remained with the junior team and eventually became repeat champions. The new intermediate team made it to the finals, but ultimately lost. World War I began in Europe, with the first Canadian troops landing in France by December of 1914. In 1915, the intermediate team won their first championship and was awarded the John Ross Robertson Trophy. The trophy is kept in the Orillia Museum of Art and History's collection. However, it is put on display each November at the Orillia Public Library as part of the annual Remembrance event. After the final game in the season, the entire Yonkers team enlisted to fight in the First World War. Most of the Orillia boys signed up with the Grey and Simcoe Foresters. However, several of the members of the hockey team enlisted with the 40th Sportsmen's Battery of Hamilton so that they could try and continue playing hockey before being shipped overseas. Meanwhile, in Toronto, the captain of the University of Toronto Varsity Blues, a young man named Conn Smythe, led his team to the 1915 championship, and a week later, his team all enlisted in the Canadian military as well. After attending the Royal School of Artillery in Kingston, Conn Smythe made full lieutenant and was able to get himself transferred to the 40th Sportsmen's Battery of Hamilton. The unit, with Smythe as team manager, organized a team to compete in the Ontario Hockey Association's Senior League. They were one of 4 Toronto-based teams in the league in 1916. Smythe played one game at center position, and then decided to replace himself with a better player. Several of the Orillia hockey players were on this team, with Lovering Jupp and Quinn Butterfield being his top picks. The team did not complete the season, as the 40th Battery went overseas in February of 1916. The 40th Battery was ordered into the Ypres Salient. On October 15, 1916, shelling found their position, killing Major Southam, the commanding officer, and Sergeant Major Norm Harvey, one of the Orillia hockey players, making Smythe temporary commander of the battery. Norm Harvey would be the only one from the team who would be killed in action. The battery fought for nearly 2 months in the trenches near the Somme before being relieved. When World War I ended in 1918, the Orillia boys came home with plans to get on with their lives. Sadly, upon their return from the war, nearly all of the players retired from hockey, with some only playing recreationally. Conn Smythe returned home to become the principal owner of the Toronto Maple Leafs from 1927 until 1961, and as the builder of their original home, Maple Leaf Gardens. In 1932, the Toronto Maple Leafs won their first Stanley Cup. When interviewed by a reporter about the 40th Battery team, Smythe said that Love Jupp was the best forward I ever had the pleasure of managing. If it was today, he would be in my first line. And of Butterfield, he said, although Quinn Butterfield was a hard boy to handle, I would say he was the best of them all. Today, the Conn Smythe Trophy is awarded to the most valuable player on his team during the Stanley Cup playoffs, with Sidney Crosby and Wayne Gretzky each winning it twice. So what happened to the Orillia Championship hockey players after World War I? Lovering Jupp fought with the 40th Battery as a gunner and driver in France and Belgium. When he got home, he worked in a bank. He remained an avid hockey fan for his entire life, but only played recreational hockey. He died in 1967. All four Jupp brothers fought in World War I. Quinn Butterfield spent the war as a gunner and driver for the 40th Battalion and took part in the great battles of the Somme and Vimy Ridge. Quinn came home restless and took up land out west for a few years, but soon he was back in Ontario working clerking jobs in different communities. He died around 1930, in his mid-30s. Had World War I not happened, both Lovering Jupp and Quinn Butterfield could have been professional hockey players with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Ken Mcnabb enlisted into the 40th Battery on September 1, 1915, at age 21. He manned a big artillery gun at the Somme and Vimy Ridge, one of the most dangerous places to be. After the war, he worked in his family's hardware store, which grew into one of Orillia's strongest businesses. Ken retired about 1960 and died around 1965. The trophy for the best defenseman in Orillia minor hockey is still called the Ken Mcnabb Trophy. Norm Harvey, son of an admired Orillia doctor, enlisted straight into the 40th Battery. He advanced quickly as he was well liked by everyone. On the battlefield in France, he was made acting sergeant major. Several times he had been offered an officer's position, but turned it down so he could stay with his Orillia buddies on the front lines. He lost his life saving others. He was the only Yonker to die in the war. Ted Korbold gave up his engineering training to man the guns behind the trenches with the 40th Battery. 6 weeks before the end of the war in September 1918, Ted was hit by shrapnel. His right knee suffered penetrating shrapnel wounds. For the rest of his life, he could only bend his knee to 90 degrees. This ended his goaltending days. He worked as a civil engineer in communities around Toronto. When war broke out, Morley Carter was working as a dentist in Orillia. He enlisted with the Grey and Simcoe Foresters, but soon realized he didn't like the army. So in 1916, he transferred to the Royal Flying Corps. He flew 23 missions and lived to tell the tale. On November 2, 1918, he was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. He continued flying planes, working as an aviator for the government, but never played hockey again after the war. Morley was killed in a car accident in 1937. Norm Cook enlisted with the Grey and Simcoe Foresters and spent the war as a machine gunner. It was a dangerous place to be, as the enemy always concentrated fire on the deadly machine guns. In May of 1918, he was hospitalized for no apparent reason. He married soon after he returned home and had a family. Norm worked as an insurance salesman and bookkeeper, as well as a car salesman. He died at the age of 51 in 1945. It is not known if he played hockey again after the war. George Ross moved to Orillia when his father was killed in an accident. When the war broke out, he didn't enlist, although the reason is unknown. His youngest son, Grant Gander Ross, became a great baseball player, coach, and goalie for several hockey teams, and was named Orillia's Athlete of the Year in 1955, the same year that George died. Andy Tuddup lived comfortably before the war, as his family ran the biggest factory in Orillia. He joined the army with the other players and had earned the rank of major by war's end. He remained in the Army Reserves for years. Andy also served as a town councillor for 4 years and was an active member of the community. He died in 1970 due to a stroke at age 75. 100 years ago, the Yonkers were well known both in Orillia and throughout southern Ontario, where they played hockey. The star players on that team were highly respected and thought of as celebrities, but they all fell to duty to their country and decided to put their hockey careers on hold to fight in World War I. Sadly, they came home either wounded or suffering from shell shock from what they had experienced in the trenches. This ended any possibility of a future in hockey. Let's not forget their sacrifices for our freedom. Special thanks goes to David Town, who brought this 100-year-old story to future generations in his book, Orillia's Greatest Hockey Team, The Incredible Yonkers, giving us the opportunity to pay tribute and to remember these remarkable Orillians.